Hey guys, in this tutorial we're going to create this dashboard design in Figma. Now, this is a series of Figma tutorials which I recently created. By the way, if you're interested in learning UI UX design from a designer with over 8 years of experience, feel free to check out the link in the description and join my email list. Since I'm giving weekly tips on how to get started and bring your UI UX design career to the next level. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Alright, so let's start by creating a frame, and in this case we're going to go with the desktop 1440 pixels of width, and this is going to serve us as our base. Now let's double click on the layer name and let's rename it to 1. And now the very first thing that we want to do is to actually go ahead and use the rectangle tool in order to create the side menu. So we're going to make it white, and we're going to add a different color to the background. So let's select a tint around this blue, and let's just keep it as it is. And we're also going to change the tint in the surrounding background, just so we can see better what we're actually going to work on. What we're actually going to work on. So let's remove the shadow over here, and we're going to lock this layer. And then now at this point we're going to use the text tool, and we're going to write the very first element of this dashboard, and we're going to use Montserrat, which is a free Google web font which you can find directly on Google's website. So let's make it a 13. Let's start like that. We're going to duplicate it a few times using Shift plus the Option key. And now that we've done that once in order to duplicate it, we're going to use Command plus D. And as you can see, magic happens as we can essentially recreate the same and copy it in the same vertical fashion. So let's go ahead and let's use some, or actually even before we start using the names, I'm just going to use NucleoApp, which which you can basically Google at NucleoApp. I think nucleoapp.com is the website, and you can see that we have a whole lot of different icons, and we can simply drag and drop them into Figma, and everything is essentially going to be super easy when it comes to adding icons. So I'm just going to add a few of these guys, and let's try and select some which might look cool in this instance. And I also want to maintain some sort of visual consistency between these icons, because I don't want to have them too far apart from one another when it comes to the style. So for example, I want to mix and match icons which are just outline with filled icons and stuff like that. So all right, so far so good. Now let's make all of these icons smaller. And I'm probably going to try and match the size of this rectangle for each and every one of these icons, so that it's going to be consistent. And one thing that I really like to do is to simply go ahead and drag the icons next to each other, and essentially trying to make them look consistent between one another. And I think we're in a good position now. All right, so far so good. Let's bring these guys up. And let's bring this one here. And I'm probably going to make this one just a tiny bit smaller. And cool. All right. So let's go ahead here and write some layers. So this one's going to be cloud storage, networking, and this one's going to be main. And there we go. All right, so far so good. Let's bring these ones a little bit more on the right. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to change the color just a bit, so it looks a little bit less, has a little bit of less visual emphasis. And probably, well, let's just leave it as it is for the time being, but might do the same also for these elements. So, all right, so far so good. Let's bring these guys a little bit up, and I think we're in a good spot so far. All right, the very next thing that we're gonna do is we're going to add some sort of logo on the top, and let's use this one as the main logo. Let's bring all of this down, and let's just go ahead, bring this one up a notch, and maybe we're going to change it, but for the time being I think this looks okay. And now what we want to actually add at the very bottom is a logout feature. So logout, select this, let's write in logout, let's find an icon which can serve that specific purpose. Let's just change the color over here, bring it up here. And so far so good. So I think we got our main navigation screen. So the next thing that we're gonna do is we're going to have a search bar right here. Going to add a rectangle. Let's bring the rectangle below. We're going to make it white and just a tiny bit rounded. What I'm noticing here is that I want to have a little bit of more, I want to see a little bit more of what's going on below. So I'm just going to make the background just a bit darker. I'm also going to bring these guys over here. All right, so far so good. Now what we're gonna do is we're actually going to have a search icon. So let's go over here, let's find the search icon, and this one's going to work. And I'm going to select that color again, make the search icon a bit bigger, and let's bring it over here. All right, so far so good. And the search is probably going to have the same color as the icon. We don't really want to have a whole lot of visual emphasis on the search itself. And there we go. All right, so far so good. Now let's add a notification bell right here. Notification, and here we go. Let's make this one bigger. Let's bring it over here. And we're going to use the same color. And let's also use a profile picture on the right. So round it up all the way so that it looks like this. And we're going to go over here. We're going to use the Unsplash plugin in order to add a profile picture. Taking a moment to load up, and now let's click on portrait. And yeah, let's use this one right here. However, one thing we want to change is the cropping of this image. Yep, that looks just about right. And I'm going to also copy the text. We're also going to add a arrow just right here. So let's go ahead and let's find an arrow which is going to work well. This one I think it's going to work just fine. Let's make it smaller. Let's bring it over here, change the color of the arrow, and we pretty much got it. So let's add also a stroke. It's going to be on the outside. It's going to be with the same color. Oops, a little bit too much. 0.5 will do the job. And just a bit small, bigger. All right, so far so good. So we have our base when it comes to this dashboard, and now the very next thing that we're gonna do is we're going to actually go ahead and create the main section. So we're going to have team members right here. And we're going to add all of the details regarding the team members. Let's make it bigger over here. And let's go ahead. Let's resize this element. And there we go. All right, so far so good. Let's make it smaller. Let's make it 70 by 70. Something around those lines will do. Let's round it. Let's make it rounded, and we're going to use the Unsplash plugin again. Let's go on search. Let's go on portrait, and we're going to change this one here. So let's make it crop. We're going to use the Unsplash plugin in just a moment again, but before doing that we need to duplicate this a few times, and even before that we're going to do some tweakings. All right, so let's go over here. Let's use some text. Let's add also a title below. And we're going to change this one to light. And let's bring this one here below. Let's also add a little bit of more numbers and values. So this one's going to be 60, and this one's going to be an SEO rank. Let's bring it over here, and let's center this. Let's write analytics on this one. This one's going to be marketing. All right, so far so good. Let's make these a little bit smaller. And there we go. All right, so far so good. And now at this point we're also going to add some sort of icon above. And maybe I'm going to change this just a little bit, so it's a little bit more subtle. And still need to figure it out. Yeah, maybe something around those lines will do the job. All right, so far so good. Let's copy all of this. Let's duplicate it a few times. And what I'm noticing is that I want a little bit of more width to this composition. So that's what I'm gonna do. Let's duplicate it now. It's a little bit too much. Let's bring it about here. And again, not ideal. The ideal is over here. I'm just going to copy and paste this just a few times, and that will probably do. All right, so far so good. So we have our base for this element. Now let's go over here. Let's duplicate it a few times, or actually let's just move it on the right, I might say. And we're also going to duplicate it once more here below. All right, so far so good. Now the next thing that we're gonna do is we're going to mix the colors up just a little bit in order to add some variation visually, and probably going to go with something around these lines. Let's try and see. This could potentially work a bit better. And I think that's just about right. For some reason, I want to try some different tint as well. Yeah, maybe let's keep it like this. All right, so far so good. Now let's bring back our Unsplash plugin. We're going to select a few more profile pictures. And we'll need to adjust them, but that's fine for now. All right, so let's just go ahead one by one. Fill. Okay, this one's just about right. Let's click over here, fill also this one. And let's bring this one just a touch down. Feel all right. It's looking pretty good. And I'm probably going to crop this one. Let's go over here. Yeah, just bring it more on the right. All right, so far so good. Now, the very next thing that we're gonna do is we're going to use this cool plugin called Content Reel. And what this is going to enable us to do is, as you can see, we have like a mini introduction. Is we're going to add some different names over here, and I want to try and find some specific names. List of females. For some reason this one's not working. All right, I guess just keep it like that, and there we go. All right, so far so good. Center this. And now let's add some other values over here. And so far, so good. All right, overall, this is looking pretty good so far. Let's just bring this one here below. And we're also going to add some dots, some menu dots on the top of these elements. Since I feel might be some more options that we haven't really explored. And the 25, 26, let's make them 28 and 28. And yeah, it's looking pretty good. I'm just going to duplicate them a few times, and then ideally you want to put them inside of unique groups. So let me do that again. Over here, 28, and there we go. All right, so far so good. Now what we're gonna do next is we're going to add some sort of a button. So I'm going to just duplicate this guy right here, bring it to the button. I'm going to just bring it up and outside of the current group, and that will do. Now we're going to create a pagination of this, essentially, which is going to be right here. Let's add also a arrow icon. And there we go. Let's change this from here. Let's make this medium, and we got our pagination. Probably I want to make also these a little bit smaller, around 41. And there we go. All right, so far so good. Let's probably bring this over here, and let's add another icon, which is going to serve us for the filtering in this app. And I think This one will do. And there we go. All right, so far so good. Now let's also add a button right here. Just going to enable us to add a team member. So add team member, and let's go over here and let's add that. Let's change the color. Yep, semi-bold. Let's add user, and ideally with a plus button. Now let's search by glyph. Yeah, well, let's use this one. All right, so let's go over here and let's create this button on the very top. And I think we're pretty much set and ready to move on to the next section. Just going to be basically finishing all this up, and we're ready to rock and roll. All right, so let's duplicate this guy as well. And let's add two elements, which is going to be listen activity and let's remove all of this and that's it. So yeah, here we go guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.